Welcome back, everybody. We got Will and I-Man here from the Block Runner MetaZone, Rovi and MScribe, and today we're going to be talking about some AI.
That's right, dude.
Have you heard of that acronym before, I-Man?
First time. First time taking notice of this AI thing.
Yeah.
But apparently I'm way behind. So is the rest of humanity. And we got a pretty daunting chart to kind of reflect that. I don't know, daunting probably not the right word. It's
Impressive.
yeah, shockingly I don't know. It definitely paints the picture of like what's going on in this day and age, right?
Yeah.
And like it feels like this new age pretty much began at the point of what we're about to show you here, right?
Yeah.
It's like we're in some new like life mode, right?
Yeah, so if you guys haven't heard of OpenClaw, I mean, it's kind of a big deal. It's such a big deal that if you chart the stars on a GitHub over time, you'll see two big ones, Facebook, which is React, and Linux.
Yeah.
This blue and yellow line. And then you see this like weird red line.
Just came out of nowhere, dude.
Yeah, which is OpenClaw.
Yeah, so what are these others? These are like front-end programming languages.
Front-end and Linux operating system.
Okay, but these are like legacy Dino techs that, you know.
Yeah, they've existed since 2014 and before.
Yeah, and then they've organically, you know, appreciated over time by developers. But this thing, this is some new explosion of some new thing, right? And it's following some unseen trajectory. So
last time we looked at a chart like this, it was...
If AI...
Eliza.
Well, yeah, AI 16Z Eliza.
Yeah.
Which was like a year and a half ago or so.
Yeah.
We were like, holy crap, this is impressive. But we didn't realize like the context.
Yeah.
Context comparison, right?
Yeah.
They were comparing the growth curve of Eliza to like, I don't know, some other fringy open source models.
Yeah.
That almost nobody heard of.
Yeah. At the time, it had like 2,000 stars.
Yeah. So if you put that on this scale, it wouldn't even like...
You wouldn't register it.
It would be just a flat line.
Yeah.
So always keep in mind of context, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Like, so you actually know like the gravity of the situation.
So speaking of the gravity here, React is the most liked GitHub ever, and OpenClaw just surpassed it.
So we got a new winner in town, dude.
Yeah, just like that. In 2 months, boom.
So yeah, if there's ever been a signal in your face, it's definitely this one, right?
Yeah.
So why? What's the big deal, dude?
It's really hard to describe, actually. It's well, first of all, it's something that Apple has been attempting since like 2013, 2014 with Siri, and it's an AI assistant, right? It's sort of underwhelming when you explain it that way.
Yeah.
But it is an AI that actually can do stuff, meaning it can edit Excel, it could write tweets, it could scrape Twitter, it could scrape the internet, it could email on your behalf, it can track your calories.
Yes.
It's literally anything that you want an AI to do, it could do it.
Yeah. Which is great.
Yeah. I mean, it's so great that people agree.
Yeah.
We got a giant red candle there.
Yeah, so I've been trying to mentally, I guess, kind of like find a parallel. It reminds me of like smart contracts, I guess, where some new thing has come into existence and you're kind of expecting some new, almost like a microeconomy to kind of forge itself around it. Like we've already seen that, like there's a lot of like, you know, OpenClaw derivative spin-offs just trying to like latch into the ecosystem itself and, you know, build out from there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, you know, Ethereum introduces smart contracts. You get these new novel things like DeFi and NFTs and all these other different like tertiary primitives, I guess, that kind of like enhance the overall fundamental value of this smart contract thing. So this new market, I guess you would call it like agent orchestration, I guess, if you were to give it a name.
Yeah, I would say so.
Because you see all the big tech companies, you know, they're doing their own variation of this. Perplexity, you know, Anthropic itself, OpenAI. So we're living in the new modern era of agentification, boys and girls.
Yeah, so it was at the end of 2022 was ChatGPT. That was like an inflection point in AI, and I think OpenClaw is that next inflection point.
Yeah, so here we are, once again, taking note of some sort of major signal, and I mean, we're seeing it. A lot of crypto YouTubers are like full on pivoting also. So we're not full on pivoting, but we're definitely like refactoring our, like, how do we cover this?
Yeah.
because this is obviously something to be covered, right?
Yeah.
There's an opportunity here, in other words.
Yeah, so crypto and AI, they're going to merge. They're going to be indistinguishable soon enough.
Yeah, but right now, it definitely
is,
doesn't feel like
it definitely doesn't.
We're not there. And yeah, something happened native to a crypto project we talked in the past called Venice that kind of reflects that exact sentiment.
Yeah, right? So Erik Voorhees, the creator of Venice, is saying here, Venice is now the recommended model for OpenClaw. So we saw this. I was like, well, that's interesting.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird that OpenClaw would just select something.
Especially when you realize that there's a crypto association to it, and then you understand Steinberg's like hatred for crypto.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like actual hatred at this point. Or he was asked, it's like, well, what is the one piece of advice you'd give to somebody in their 20s? And he's like, stay as far away as you can from crypto.
Right,
that was his response.
But then we were thinking about it, so, well, Venice is like a privacy-focused LLM.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, maybe that kind of makes sense.
I think maybe it does. Maybe there's like, because now, so the lore is Steinberg created OpenClaw. It was an open source thing. And then it became so big that OpenAI scooped them up for $1 billion.
Yeah, let's say $1 billion.
But now there's like a ecosystem of maintainers, basically, who are not, it's not Steinberg. It's just like a decentralized cohort in a sense. They may have their own principles in mind as far as, we want to maintain some sort of like differentiation from corporate tech.
Yeah.
So privacy.
Yeah. Seems kind of to make sense. But then a few hours later, it's like.
And it's gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
No, dude. Like, just like that.
Yeah. So it says here, Jesse, was piling on this, but it says here that the screenshot was misleading the audience to think that the Venice AI is officially endorsed when its documentation PR merged by mistake.
Damn.
So it was not ever endorsed. It was just a mistake. And by the way, this documentation is completely built by AI. So
yeah,
no human is actually reading through this. It's all agent stuff.
Well, that's not a good what's a showcase of your product.
But your AI is not going to be perfect all the time. But
yeah, I know.
But yeah, you have to review the output.
Definitely.
And so someone did, and they fixed it. And I'm sure it was because Erik Voorhees really brought a lot of attention to this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and of course the market reacted, right?
Yeah, so let's take a look at that. Do we have a chart here? Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, boom.
Yeah, that's the support.
It's like, wow, crypto actually isn't being endorsed by, OpenClaw.
Yeah.
We did it. And then it's like, no, we didn't.
Yeah.
Now flashing back down to reality, potentially,
Yeah, it went as high as 340 million, and right now it's 260, so it's not too crazy. And it's like still up.
Still up
relative
massively,
terms.
Actually.
Yeah.
But I think it's also because it's not just like OpenClaw doesn't have all the motion in the world, right? There's a Stanford article you just kind of clicked on, and it kind of supports the validation thesis of something like Venice, or more of like a privacy-focused AI angle, right?
Yeah. It says Stanford just analyzed the privacy policies of the 6 biggest AI companies in America: Amazon, Anthropic, Google, Meta, Microsoft, and OpenAI. All 6 use your conversations to train their models by default without meaningfully asking. Here's what the paper actually found. The researchers at Stanford examined 28 privacy documents across the 6 companies, not the main privacy policy, but every linked sub-policy, fact, and guidance page accessible from the chat interfaces, and they evaluated all of them against the California Consumer Privacy Act and the most comprehensive privacy law in the United States. The results are worse than you think.
Ouch.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's not too crazy to think that these companies are taking data from people and like training it. Like,
isn't this like status quo at this point? It's not just AI. Like this whole thing, like
all of Web 2 is
like
that
social media.
Yeah,
Zuckerberg had to go to Congress for this.
Yeah, Grok is trained by everything that's submitted in Twitter.
Yeah.
So
it's like it's an unfortunate reality of what the process that goes into building this stuff and improving it over time.
Yeah.
It's just a question of whether or not people are actually going to care.
And history has shown that they do not care.
Yeah, maybe it's just because they just don't know. Like
No. Facebook has been hacked. Credit card companies have been hacked. Everything has been compromised, and we still use these things.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be any different for AI.
So then you're completely trashing the thesis for privacy in general. Like, there's no need for it.
No. It's not that there's no need. There's absolutely a need for sure. It's just that there isn't going to be a compromise or some event that's going to just transition the masses to privacy stuff. It's just not going to happen. And ultimately, it's okay. I think that a lot of people's position in terms of AI is like, I want to use the best AI, even if they're taking my data.
Yeah.
And because your competitors are using the best AI.
Yeah, but if there's another product, it's like you can get the same results, but through like some privacy layer. But like, why not use that?
But that's the thing. That's the thing. You're not going to get the same results.
Well, if it's using the same model, you can use Opus to Venice.
Sure.
Right? So what's the difference? It's like Venice, it just gives you a wrapper of protection, I guess.
Yeah, Venice is like it's like a pool of prompt injections. Mm-hmm. And you don't really know who owns the prompt.
A mixer.
Yeah.
Which seems valuable. It's just, again, it's a question of, will people start to care enough to actually, like, I don't know, use some other unfamiliar thing as opposed to, like, what's being sold to them by these big companies.
I mean, ultimately, if you're using Opus at the end of the day, they're still seeing the prompts. Now, do they know it's coming from you? No. Mm-hmm. But they're still getting the raw text.
Yeah.
But,
so here it is.
Yeah, this is Venice.
This is the thing you would use as opposed to, ChatGPT or whatever model that you're using to enhance your life. You could use this instead because it's advertised as, it's a privacy layer for AI usage.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not too bad. $18 a month.
That's not bad. I mean, I'm trying to think. What's the real scare factor of these companies knowing my prompts?
That's a great question.
I guess it depends on what you're saying.
Well, I mean, they get to see a lot more than your usual company. Like on Facebook, you're not talking about your calorie intake, and you're not talking about hey, I'm having this issue with somebody, and can you help me out here? Right. Facebook doesn't really know that stuff, but your AI assistant might.
I see. Yeah, because people are divulging much more than usual about themselves.
100%.
Than you would through some social media post or which is the data that Zuckerberg consumes on the daily.
Yeah, or any Web2 app for that matter.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just more of the same concern, right? And then all that gets used against you in court whenever you actually do something 100%. Wrong. That's the real scary part. Is hopefully you don't just fuck up, because then you weaponize an arsenal of evidence against you.
Yeah, that's easily searchable, and you just ask the AI, what did Will say about making a weapon? Yeah, it's here it is.
He's been talking for years about this with his AI. Yeah, it's pretty likely he's the one who blew up that building.
Yeah.
Shit like that, right? Yeah. So if you don't want that, then privacy's for you. Basically, that's the sales pitch,
right,
for stuff like this.
Yeah. So there's a price. Let's continue here. We got charts still exist like this. In a world where we need the uncensorable and anonymized compute is only going to go parabolic. So you don't have to overthink it. This is what actual usage looks like. 2.5 million users and counting.
Yeah, and I checked in on that user claim. I think it's more near 1 million. But even still, 1 million is pretty impressive for
that's huge.
A Web3 anything.
Yeah.
So that's good. I mean, ChatGPT has over 1 billion. So it's on its way.
You got to start with the first 1 million.
Yeah, it's penetrating a bit, right?
All right, so Erik Voorhees, there are no prompts convos to be discovered in Venice. We can respond to any subpoena with a comprehensive record that contains nothing.
So that's what you want.
Privacy only exists when data doesn't.
Yeah, that's what when you're in that court seat, and then the judge is asking for this.
Yeah.
Or I guess not the judge, the persecutor.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
The guy who's trying to lock you up.
Prosecutor. Yeah.
Yeah, they're looking for this evidence, and then it's turns out he's been using Venice his whole life, so we got nothing on him.
It's guilty.
Just using Venice alone is it's using
suspicious.
The dark web.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So this is him just, he's capitalizing on the momentum of the narrative, right? It's I told you guys.
Yeah.
Privacy was going to matter. So ever since Stanford pushes out this big, spook campaign, now things like Venice make sense, right?
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's continue here. It says, glad Venice is killing it, but Akash, being at 89 million market cap, or sorry, it says, but yeah, Akash being at 89 million market cap and Venice being at 332 million is pricing error for Akash.
Right.
So, and Venice is built on Akash.
Yeah, some sort of infrastructure provisions from Akash. So what is it?
It's right here. It is the decentralized cloud for AI's next frontier.
Yeah, so we've seen a few of these kind of product iterations so far within the Web3 ecosystem.
You know what else we've seen? Apps being at a higher valuation than the underlying technology.
That's true, which is...
It's sort of common.
Seems kind of newish too, but like back in the good old days of crypto, it's like the infra stuff was like the big...
True.
I remember in my early days of Trench life.
Well, I think the infrastructure stuff was the only stuff for the most part.
Pretty much. I mean, yeah, there are projects ICOing, like, we're utilizing the infrastructure to do X, Y, and Z, but those tokens tended not to get as much, awareness because, it's like you want, exposure to the infra, right? At least that was the thesis of the time. Now you're right. It's we're in the application age, I think, because I think the market is saturated with infra.
Yeah.
It's about time. Let's prove some value here, right? Let's get some users. 1 million users is not bad.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
So here's Akash. It's 96 million now.
It's pumping. So people still like infra, just, it doesn't get the same amount of push whenever, you don't have like human beings to report on the efficacy of these things like you would, I have a courtroom testimonial.
Yeah. Yeah.
And got me out of a pickle because I've been using Venice,
Right. Yeah, so that's the underlying infrastructure. Balaji comes in, and he says, so he's responding to this guy. He says, NVIDIA, Amazon, and Google will have to divest from Anthropic. This is simply attempted corporate murder. I could not possibly recommend investing in American AI to any investor. I could not possibly recommend starting an AI company in the United States.
Damn.
So this is
this feels like
United States pressure.
Yeah. Well,
on Anthropic.
Yeah, you saw what happened, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe, if you weren't paying attention, like war started a few days ago in Iran, and leading up to that war, there was quite like an AI debacle, right? Where war was running off of Claude, basically. The war machine of today. It's like we were really rooting on Claude and Anthropic, but then the CEO stepped in and was like, we're kind of against this because it's against our constitutional morals, I guess. The ability to like facilitate agentic manslaughter.
Yeah.
And, human surveillance at mass scale.
So Dario, the CEO of Anthropic, he was like, part of the Constitution is making sure that we don't develop technology, their own Constitution, develop technology that surveils all of Americans and or creates autonomous killing machines.
Correct.
Without any human intervention.
Or at least like we're not, his claim is like, I think that's okay, but not yet. Like,
yeah,
the agentic killing machines part. It's like,
because it's just not reliable.
Not yeah. So you're going to get a lot of like,
oopsies.
Yeah. Just a few civilian casualties here and there. Right. And the United States is like, yeah, so what?
Yeah.
I mean, have you not seen our wars in the past? This is war, lads.
Yeah, that's true.
This is how it goes down.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You have to kind of defer to the United States here because they have the most powerful military, and they probably know what it takes to actually protect a country.
I would imagine.
Like, to a certain extent, right? They do have some, like, additional knowledge that we do not have.
Right.
Well, so
consequences, the alleged plug pulling from Anthropic and then now resocketing to OpenAI.
Yeah.
Sam Altman stepped right in, dude. He's like, I got no qualms
with
this strategy at all, dude. It's like, kill as many as you want, man.
Killer robots, I'm all in, dude.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like, what an idiot, that Dario guy. It's like, what a fumble, dude. He fumbled the OpenClaw guy. Now he fumbled the United States military, dude.
Yeah.
See? People with morals always lose, dude.
It's true. It's true.
You can't win in this role being a nice guy. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, so that's why Balaji is saying that open source models are going to be key here because all AI American companies are fighting the Democrats, which is essentially saying that you're taking all the jobs through AI, and Republicans are saying you should give all AI to the military. And then China is just essentially competing with similar-esque LLM models that are completely open source. So, like, if you find an equilibrium between all these things happening, open source ends up winning because it's like nobody can, like, the government can't push on open source.
Right.
Democrats and Republicans, they can't push any one direction either. So it's like open source wins.
It's like it's headless technology, right? Like that's kind of that's always been the Web3 thesis all along, right? It's like that's why you want to build out these primitives. And so here comes Const. Remember him, dude?
He's the former CEO.
Yeah, I guess.
Of Bittensor.
Yeah, he stepped down, which it sends either red or green flags, right? It's like, because we've seen a lot of this where, like, founders of some organization in crypto, when they step down, it typically means just like an exit. It's like, they're moving on to like something completely different, and then they spin the narrative of like,
a
foundation,
community owned.
It's decentralized and it's all up to you guys, and then everything just kind of falls apart. So we'll see. This is definitely going to be a stress test for the ecosystem at large. Like, can they maintain on their own? Right. So
Const is saying proof that unless we re-architect the incentive layer of AI-powered politics, the market simply reroutes around consciousness. And he's referring to Sam Altman's declaration of
war.
Yeah.
AI war.
Basically.
Yeah. It's like, see, this is what happens when, people want money. It's like they just kind of don't give a fuck about the moral consequence of it all. So there he is. It's like, so Bittensor's here, right? We exist for this exact very reason.
Yeah. So Chutes, trusted execution environment is alive. Confidential compute is here. So that's another
subnet.
Yeah, correct.
It's one that's
probably the most successful subnet.
I think so. It's the most valuable one. It's the one we kind of talked about before the subnets even went live. It's like this one probably has like the most shot, I think, to like being some successful entity within Web3 to penetrate into the mainstream, Web2 universe. Because I think they're leveraging a lot of these like incentive models of Bittensor.
Yeah.
To offer like these premium inferencing
to subsidize capacities. Some of the tokens for like using these like higher cost LLMs.
Yeah, so therefore there's actual some real tangible benefits to utilizing their technology, right? To the common developer. So
yeah, one of them is privacy here. So 100% private, 100% secure. And Chutes using Claude Code or Codex. Why not use the open source version through Chutes? And the open source versions are Kimi K 2.5, GLM5, and 60 other models right through Chutes. Yeah. Basically, it's like you're just switching a different API call, and then you're accessing open source stuff. All right, Chutes is market cap 82 million, and let's see what they're doing over the last 7 days. Kind of steady.
Yeah, so this is kind of like the why you kind of explore these things now, like while the sentiment is kind of hot and like the narrative of theirs, all these things contingent to like Bittensor or any other like open source Web3 AI initiative, it was always going to rely on some sort of big bad wolf narrative. I think most things native to crypto do. Like Bitcoin itself, it really relies on the headwinds of like the macroeconomic situation.
Yes.
And like the continuation of like these bad monetary policies, which have been maintaining. So therefore, the price of Bitcoin has kept going up over the last 15, 17 years, whatever.
Yeah.
So AI, similar situation. You need more of this drama. You need more of this like uncertainty of like, too much control on this system and like the systemic risks of that.
Yeah.
The value proposition goes up for things like this, right? Over time.
Yeah. And like you're saying, now's the time to pay attention to this stuff because you don't want to pay attention to when it reaches its new all-time highs.
Yeah, well, yeah, because then it's too late.
Yeah.
It's really that simple.
Yeah.
You buy low, sell high, guys. That's for pure entertainment value only.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that's it for us. We talked about Venice. We talked about Bittensor and Chutes. Let us know if you have any questions around the AI crypto space. There's definitely a lot of stuff going on. And if you found anything interesting in the AI or crypto space, let us know in the comment section below. I appreciate you for watching. We'll catch you in the next video.
Peace.